everybody, it's Lindsay with the Creative Arrow, and today we're going to be doing painted backgrounds for our art journals. So I have 5 different styles that I'm going to show you. They kind of range from super simple to some more complicated, but honestly anybody can follow along and do these. You can also combine them to create some really unique combinations of backgrounds. You will need a paintbrush, a palette knife, acrylics, and a couple other things, but it should be a fun activity and you should be able to use this in your art journals pretty much immediately. So let's get our supplies ready and let's get started. So for this first background, I'm going to be using a medium round tip paintbrush, and I'm going to be using this Folk Art Wild Wasabi acrylic paint. So I'm going to be doing this in stripes, but I'm going to alternate where I start. So I'm going to start down here really thick towards the bottom, and then I'm going to go to the top really thick towards the top and just drag my paintbrush through the whole length of the page. So it is going to get a little like washy and kind of texture towards the ends, and I kind of really like that because it adds a little bit of variety, adds a little bit of texture, and I'm not worried about them being super straight. I just kind of like the organic feel of it, and the process of drawing this line is really relaxing for me. So I'm going to do it on this page as well, again rotating where I stop and start and alternating where those thick areas are and where those thin areas are. And just like that, I'm done. And it's super easy. This one is a background that you can do very quickly. It's something that anybody can do regardless of your skill level. And I think it turns out really cute in the end. So I'm going to set this one aside to dry. And I'm going to show you a couple examples of pages that I've already used this background in. As you can see, I used a turquoise version with a thinner paintbrush in this one. And it's really cute. I painted some little hearts and I added the word with acrylics on top, and it's so adorable. Everything just kind of goes really well together. In this one, I used it on the right side, and I obviously did something else on the left side. And I did add these little dots to just give it a little more variety. So there's ways that you can elevate it. And then I glued this little letter on it, and I think it just makes it really super cute. So those are 2 examples. I have one more example here, and this is a mixed media piece. So there's lots of layers on this one. You can barely see, but there are some yellow stripes kind of showing through here. And I did add paper, I added some more stickers, and there's some acrylic paint and pen here. So just closer up you can see here, there's a couple of those lines showing through. So you can have it as much or as little as you want, but these are just a couple examples for you to see how you can use this background in art journals. So now that this is dry, I'm going to go ahead and flip to a new page, and we're going to do background 2. And for this one, I'm also going to be using some acrylic paint. So I'm going to use these 2 colors here. I have a Canyon Sunset by Folk Art and a Baby Blush by Deco Art. I'm also going to be using a palette knife for this. If you don't have a palette knife, you can use an old credit card or something like that. But we're actually going to start with the paint directly on the page. So I'm going to kind of squeeze it on here, varying where it goes and how much of it is on. And then I'm going to go in with my next color, doing the same thing, squeezing it directly onto the page. And this is, however much you can get on there is great. If you have a lot, that's fine. You just don't want too much. So I'm going to show you here in a second. I did put a safety page behind this to protect my other pages because this one can get a little messy. And essentially you're just going to take the flat edge of your palette knife and drag it along the paint. The more you drag and mix, the more it's going to blend. So if you want some of that separation of the colors, then I would drag less. But you can see here I do have mostly orange, so I'm going to actually put some more of that baby blush back on there because I do want some variety here. So squeezing it back on, going back in with my palette knife, and I'm going to try not to push it around as much this time, but I do want it in more than one place. And with all of this excess paint that I have on my palette knife, I'm going to use it on this side. So I'm just going to spread it around and just get this excess paint off so I'm not wasting it. And it'll be a little more orange on this side, but it's also going to be a full spread as opposed to just one page. There you have it. So this one is another quick and easy one, perfect for anybody that wants a really unique technique and look with minimal effort. So I'm gonna let this one dry, and while it's drying, I'm going to show you some examples of this background that I've used in other art journals. So as you can see in this one, you have these darker reds and maroon tones that are behind this mixed media piece. And it just gives it that little bit of, something different. So I have paper glued on here, and I have little flowers painted on and words and washi tape, but it's just something to give it a little bit of a different look. And then in this one, as you can see, it's the majority of the background, and I didn't really cover it up that much, so you can really see the mixture of the colors between the reds and the pinks. And I just added a couple of words here: be brave, be bold, in acrylics, and it's done. Looks great. This other example is another mixed media piece, and I'm going to zoom in here so you can see there's some white and like rosy, dusty rose back there, and I then added, of course, paper on top and the painted acrylics. So it is more covered up, but it does give you a little more dimension than if I would have just painted it a solid color. I have one more example I'm going to show you. In this one, I think I actually went in a lot of different directions with my palette knife instead of just in one direction, and then I added this word love on top, and I actually have this little cutout, and it exposes the page behind, which is another background example we're going to get to, but this page just looks really unique and I love it. So now that this page is dry, I'm going to move on to our third technique, and this one is going to still be using acrylics, but we're going to change colors up a little bit, and we're going to change kind of the style. So I'm going to be using this Cadmium Red Deep Hue by Blick Studio Acrylics, and I'm going to switch to a smaller round tip paintbrush, and this one is going to be kind of a floral technique, but it's very loose with really dynamic brush strokes, and you'll see here in just a second. So I load up the paintbrush, and then I'm going to start in the center, and as I'm kind of swirling with these brush strokes, I'm just creating these petals. And so I don't want it to be perfect swirls. I want them to kind of overlap a little bit. And then I have some thicker sections where I apply more pressure and some thinner sections. And I just kind of move the paintbrush around like intuitively as I feel. And if they aren't looking quite the way I want them to, I will go back and like add some half circles and some loops here and there. But you really aren't going to know until you get a couple of them on here. So you're just going to kind of go a little bit at a time. I did put that sheet back there, that scrap piece of paper, to protect the page again as I got close to the edge, because I don't want it to, rub off onto the pages underneath. And I'm not going to fill the whole spread with these. So on this side, it's going to be pretty full, but I'm actually going to have it so that it looks like a bouquet of flowers, and the more you have on here, the more they're gonna kind of make each other look good. So even though it's messy and they aren't perfect, they kind of have that like cheerleader effect. So if you were looking at one single one, it might be kind of like, you're like, oh, that doesn't really look that great. But the more you have, the better they look, which is why I love it. So as I get to this side, I'm gonna have less. So I wanna have some white space here that I could then add like a quote, or if I wanted to, I could put some text or some words there, or maybe just a single word. I'm not sure Or if you wanted to, you could do that kind of envelope like I showed in the previous art journal page where I had that letter that opened up. So it gives you that opportunity to add some other things with it, but you still end up with a fun and easy background that doesn't take you very long, which is the key here. We like to have things that we can do quickly, especially if you're working, in between laundry loads or during a kid's nap time, which is usually when I work. So this is going to be something that you can do quickly and end up with something that's super unique and creative. And here you have it. So as you can see, I have the space here that I'm leaving for something else, and I'm going to let this dry and show you some examples. So this first example is the back side to the little cutout page that I just showed you. And as you can see, I used two different colors here. So I wanted one of them to stand out, and that's this little turquoise one. It's super cute. For my other example, this is the striped side, and then I added the floral stuff to the left side, and you can see I've done two tones again, a lighter tone in the background and then that dusty rose on top. And I feel like the two of these backgrounds combined just creates a really elegant and simple look, but they really complement each other, so I love using these together. And you can combine backgrounds if you want to add more interest. Now that this one is dry, we are going to move on to the next background. And for this one, I am going to be using three different colors: phthalo blue, bright aqua green, and light blue violet, and they're all Blick Studio acrylics. I'm also going to be using kind of a medium round tip paintbrush for this one to get the nice kind of brush strokes that I'm going for. So this one is going to be a alternating pattern where I do vertical lines and then horizontal lines, and then I'm going to alternate and rotate so that my vertical lines go in between each set of horizontal lines, and then when I start the next row I will alternate as well, so that I end up with this repeating pattern and kind of like a basket woven effect when it's all done. So let me go through here fairly quickly. For some reason my paint was being super chunky, and I did end up adding like a little bit of water to it. As you can see, it doesn't really want to go on super smoothly, which I'm not really used to with acrylics. Usually my acrylics work really, really great. So I'm going to show you here. I'm rotating my next row, starting with the horizontal lines and then alternating between the verticals so that each one is the opposite of the one before it and the one above it. So I'm still struggling a little bit here with the paint not doing what I want it to do, and I feel like it's important to show you that not everything goes as easily for, an artist or someone you think might be super experienced as well. So we do make mistakes and we do struggle. As you can see, I decided to go ahead and go on to the other page, so I ended up with a full spread with this one. That wasn't my intention first off, but I'm going with what the paint wants to do, and this is what the paint wants to do. I do have lots of these like messy edges, so I am going to go back and kind of clean those up just a little bit. Again, I'm not making these super perfect, but I do want them to be round on the top and round on the bottom. So I'm just taking whatever edge that I lifted my paintbrush up from, and I'm just making it a little bit thicker, a little bit smoother, and a solid round edge as opposed to those broken edges. And that is just a personal preference. You absolutely do not have to do that. If you want to leave it kind of rough to give it a little more character, you can. I'm just explaining kind of why I'm going back over these a second time. So now that I'm done with my first layer and my lightest layer of paint, I'm gonna do the same thing with my next layer, and it's still gonna be that alternating pattern, and as you can see, I'm still gonna have to play around with the paint a little bit more. These two brush strokes ended up being a lot thinner, and that was because I had rinsed out my paintbrush between colors, and so the wet bristles ended up being more stuck together and you get those thinner brush strokes. So as I'm working, I am going to apply more pressure and make them thicker so that they do match the ones that I did previously. And this broken section here where the page has the binding is going to be, a trouble area, and it's fine. We're just going to work with it. Again, the more I have on here, the less you will see all the tiny mistakes, and the more they will all just kind of look cohesive and blend together. So you really don't have to spend a ton of time making everything perfect, but if you want to go back and make adjustments, you absolutely can. So I'm on my last layer here, and again, I'm going to be working with these thinner brush strokes, so I'm going to have to fatten them as I go. But I'm going to do a little bit more quicker kind of planning brush strokes on this one. So I'm going to try to get them all on here so that they're mapped out and I know that both rows will fit. And then I'm going to go back and work on making them thicker and making the edges cleaner the way that I want them. But yeah, these initial brush strokes are just going to be quick to get on here and make sure that everything fits where it's supposed to. There you have it. This one is done, and it does, take a little bit longer and require a little bit more planning, but it looks really, really amazing when it's done. So I am going to show you an example of an art journal page where I've used this technique. And as you can see, I did a couple more different colors, and then I also did smaller brush strokes, and I actually have 3 lines in this one as opposed to 2. And that just kind of shows you how the more lines you have, the more it's going to look a little more different. And you can do that. You can change the size of the brush strokes, you can change the amount of lines you do, but it still ends up with this woven texture and it looks really cool. So we have one more technique that we're going to do. So I'm going to bring this one back out. It's nice and dry, and I'm going to flip to a new page. And this technique is going to be more of a blended technique. So for this one, I am going to do a fat, kind of flat head paintbrush. And then I'm going to go back to some of the colors that we used before. with a new color. So I'm going to use this ivory white as well as the Canyon Sunset and the cadmium red deep hue, sorry. And I'm going to protect my pages again with this scrap sheet of paper because this one is going to be big, large brush strokes that go vertically covering the whole page. So I'm going to start with my lightest color, which is the white, and I'm really loading up my paintbrush and putting a lot of pigment on here, and I'm going to go a little bit further over than I intend the color to be. And the purpose of that is you want to have plenty of color on there to blend with the next color you're adding. So as I go in with this orange, again, long vertical brush strokes, I'm using my whole arm and my hand and my wrist. And as I'm putting it on here, I'm then pulling it back towards the paint that I already put on. So I started the orange in the new area, and then I went back and put it over my white area. And it was not kind of blending as smoothly as I wanted it to, so I did go back with a little bit of white to kind of add that lighter orangey layer. And the more I blend it, the smoother the transition is from white to orange. And I'm going to add a little bit more of this orange here. That way when I get to my red, I have some paint that's wet on there that'll help it blend. And I'm not rinsing out my paintbrush between colors because I want them to transition and I want them to have a little bit of each color in them. So I'm adding my deep cadmium hue now and starting on the edge and then pulling it towards the orange. So switching my spacer sheet over and then going back in with the paint. So as you can see, my red and my orange aren't blending here. So I'm going to actually go in with a little bit more of that orange to cover up and blend with this dark red. So if you have a darker color, sometimes you might have to add that lighter color and just kind of help it mix and bleed so that you end up with a nice ombre and a smooth transition as opposed to having harsh lines. So as you can see here, it is blending a lot smoother and it's looking nice and pretty. So I've let it dry, but I have this area over here that I think is a little too white, and I want it to be a little bit more of that light orange. So I'm going to put some straight white paint back on top of it so that I can get some blending. And I'm going to go back in with my orange and play around with this area a little bit more to create that lighter orange so it has more color as opposed to being so white, because the white doesn't really do anything for me in such a big area. So I'm just going back through, adding a little bit more of that orange to create that light orange effect on this side and make that smooth transition. So there you have it. Now it's completely done and you have a beautiful ombre from white to orange to red. So I'm going to let this dry and show you a couple of examples where I've done a blended acrylic background. In this one I went from pink to yellow, and I only used two colors here. So I used this pink and this yellow, but you can see there's this other color in the middle from where they blended together and created a new color. So that's super fun. It's great for sunsets or sunrises or anything like that. I also used it on this page where I had two different colors again. This is the middle color and the red is this whole side over here. And then I only used this right side to blend the two colors together. And it worked perfectly with this idea. And it's just a really fun ombre technique and can have a lot of variety for your art journal pages. And so there you have it. We have a beautiful spread, and we have 5 different background ideas that you can use in your art journals using acrylics. We have the blended technique, your basket weaving technique, We have the floral rose, messy rose technique or carnations. We have the palette knife technique. And then we have that first technique where we used the horizontal stripes. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope you learned some new techniques that you're able to use in your own art journals. If you did have a favorite, please let me know in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and check back often as I have new content coming out every week. Thank you so much again, and I'll catch you next time.